first time he realized the fight would be longer than any battlefield tour, he was staring at a rejection letter. The envelope was thin, official, and deceptively calm, but the words inside hid like a surprise artillery strike. Your application for benefits has been denied. He had served his country with honor, had walked through fire in foreign lands. And yet, here he was, defeated by paper and policy. He set the letter down on his kitchen table and stared at it, the weight of frustration pressing on him. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, children playing in the late afternoon sun. Inside, he felt the sharp contrast of helplessness. For years, he had been trained to confront threats head-on, to rely on strategy, courage, and the resolve of a soldier. But this was different. The enemy wore no uniform. It answered to no chain of command he could fight against. It was an institution meant to protect veterans like him, and it had turned its back. But retreat was not an option. Not for him. Not for him, not after everything he had sacrificed. With a deep breath, he began organizing the paperwork, combing through every letter, memo, and federal guideline. He pored over statutes with a lawyer by his side, challenging every technicality the VA had thrown at him. It was meticulous, painstaking work, far removed from the adrenaline of combat, yet no less demanding. Every paragraph could determine whether he and countless other veterans would get what was rightfully theirs. Weeks turned into months. Appeals were filed. Denials were returned. But slowly, a pattern emerged. The VA, it seemed, had a narrow interpretation of the law, one that ignored the spirit of the benefits programs Congress had created. The system was not designed to reject veterans like him, but loopholes and internal policies had effectively done just that. Every no became fuel for his determination. Every delay strengthened his resolve to see the fight through. Eventually, his case landed before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. The courtroom was stark, formal, and intimidating. He remembered walking in that first day, civilian clothes replacing his uniform, yet the same sense of duty anchoring him. The attorneys on both sides exchanged papers and nods. Judges reviewed case files with quiet intensity. He listened as legal arguments unfolded. Words like eligibility, interpretation, and precedent ricocheted through the room. It was foreign and dry, yet every word carried weight, the kind of weight that could change lives. When the decision came down against him, it felt like a blow to the chest. But rather than surrender, he moved forward. He refused to accept the notion that a veteran could be denied benefits earned through service and sacrifice. With grit that had defined his military career, he escalated the case, ultimately, to the United States Supreme Court. The months leading up to the Supreme Court hearing were some of the most stressful of his life. Each day carried a weight far heavier than any backpack or armor he had ever worn in combat. He spent hours in his home office, buried under piles of legal documents, preparing notes, memorizing timelines, and reviewing every prior ruling. The language of law was precise, unforgiving, and complex, but he approached it with the same discipline that had guided him through military training. His family felt the tension acutely. Long nights meant missed dinners, phone calls, and quiet weekends. His children, now teenagers, would peek into the office doorway, seeing their father hunched over papers, eyes tired but determined. His spouse offered support, balancing encouragement with work. "This is your fight," she reminded him one evening, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But don't let it consume you." He nodded, knowing she was right, yet also understanding that letting go was never an option. This was more than his personal struggle. It was a test of principle, a fight for fairness that would ripple across the lives of thousands of veterans. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, the atmosphere in the Supreme Court building was both intimidating and awe-inspiring. The grand marble halls, the hushed voices, the weight of centuries of Lewitt was a different battlefield. He walked through the corridors with quiet resolve, feeling the echoes of history around him. In the courtroom, justiciars, in their flowing robes, presided over the proceedings, and VA lawyers presented their arguments with practiced precision. Every statement, every question was a potential pivot point. The VA argued that their interpretation of the benefits law was consistent with regulations and prior practice, that denying simultaneous benefits was legally justified. But his attorneys, and he himself, through meticulously prepared testimony, countered with clarity The law's intent was unmistakable, and the agency had misapplied it in ways that disadvantaged deserving veterans. Evidence was presented, showing how similar cases had been wrongly denied, and how systemic misinterpretations were causing widespread injustice. Outside the courtroom, the veteran community had taken notice. Support letters flooded in, testimonies were submitted from fellow soldiers, and advocacy groups rallied behind him. It became clear that this case was more than an individual dispute. It was emblematic of the struggles many veterans faced when dealing with the VA's complex bureaucracy. Social media buzzed with discussion. News outlets reported on the high stakes, framing it as a David versus Goliath battle where one soldier challenged a federal institution. As the oral arguments concluded, he returned home. Exhausted but resolute, he spent the following weeks in suspense, waiting for the court's decision. Sleep came in fragmented intervals, punctuated by the fear of disappointment. Yet there was also hope, a quiet, persistent belief that truth, backed by facts and law, could prevail against systemic inertia. Finally, in April 2024, the moment of truth arrived. The Supreme Court issued its ruling, and the words on the page confirmed what he had fought for over nearly a decade. The VA's restrictive interpretation of the law was overturned. He was entitled to the full benefits he had earned. Reading the decision felt surreal. It was more than a legal victory. It was vindication. Every sleepless night, every painstaking review of documents, every meeting with attorneys had led to this moment. The courtroom had been tense during the hearings. VA attorneys argued that their interpretation aligned with regulations, but Jim's meticulous preparation and clear evidence had left little room for doubt. Ayad soon, with legal precision, that the VA's narrow view had denied him and other veterans their rightful benefits. The justice's ruling echoed that principle, reinforcing that the law's intent must guide decisions, not bureaucracy, esse convenience. Outside the courthouse, news of the ruling spread quickly. Headlines celebrated a veteran's victory over a federal agency, framing it as a David versus Goliath story. Advocacy groups hailed the decision as a landmark, noting that it would help thousands of veterans who had faced similar obstacles. The veteran community rallied around Jim, praising his persistence and courage. This victory was not just personal, it was systemic, establishing a precedent that would safeguard rights for years to come. In the weeks following the ruling, Jim became a voice for others. He traveled to veteran centers, universities, and advocacy events, sharing his story and offering guidance for navigating the VA system. Fellow veterans listened intently, drawing hope and inspiration from his perseverance. His experience had become a blueprint for success, demonstrating that persistence, knowledge, and legal strategy could overcome even the most entrenched bureaucracy. The emotional toll on his family had been significant, but the victory brought immense relief. His spouse reflected on the long years of worry and support, proud of the determination that had carried them through. His children saw him not only as a soldier but as a living example of courage in the face of adversity. Their admiration was evident in quiet moments of conversation. "You've shown us that bravery only on the battlefield," one of them said. Media outlets highlighted the broader implications of the ruling. The case demonstrated that the VA could be held accountable and that veterans did not have to accept systemic injustice silently. Law journals, veteran forums, and advocacy groups cited the case as a milestone, emphasizing that persistence and preparation can challenge even large, complex institutions. For Jim, the victory reaffirmed a profound truth. Courage and sacrifice extend beyond service in the military. True bravery also lies in standing up for justice, navigating complex systems, and refusing to accept unfairness as fate. The fight had been long and exhausting, but the result was transformative. Not just for him, but for the broader veteran community. As he stood outside the Supreme Court with family, supporters, and fellow veterans, he felt a quiet sense of closure. The battle had been waged in offices, courtrooms, and legal briefs, rather than foreign lands. Yet the stakes were no less real. Promises made to those who serve had finally been honored, and the legacy of his determination would continue to guide veterans facing bureaucratic challenges for generations to come. Jim's story stands as a reminder that justice, though sometimes slow and arduous, is honorably. It demonstrates that persistence, courage, and knowledge can hold powerful institutions accountable. And above all, it proves that one person's refusal to give up can change countless lives. creating a ripple of impact far beyond their own struggle.